Hey guys, welcome back to Shot to the Nog. I am your host Eric with my co-host John here, and I was sick last week, which is why we didn't have last week's podcast. But we're
What's
back.
up? What's up, everybody? I hope you had a
Yeah.
great Thanksgiving.
Yes. I was sick the whole time. So, but it happens. We're human. That's what people get sick all the time. So let's get to the topic. Today's topic, guys, was posed to me by a friend of mine, JP Bravo, of course. He asked me, Eric, maybe this is a good topic to talk about. Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, right? Yeah, that's racist. Jeet Kune Do, how would it fare against not mixed martial arts, but let's put a Jeet Kune Do high level guy, bells and whistles, right? Let's put a Jeet Kune Do guy right in front of a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu high level black belt, right? Let's see, where does that go? How is that gonna? What's the outcome of that? And here's the thing, right? John actually has trained Jeet Kune Do, so he is a perfect person to ask the question.
I'm acquainted with it. I like
Yeah.
to say I'm acquainted with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's your thought on that, Jeet Kune Do? Maybe explain what Jeet Kune Do is exactly.
Okay. Well, there's a lot that goes with that. Jeet Kune Do is the concept of martial arts that Bruce Lee developed, or AKA created. Originally, it was called by its Cantonese, I don't know if it's Cantonese or Mandarin, but it was called Zhongfang, which is his birth name, Zhongfang Jeet Kune Do. Oh, I'm sorry, Zhongfang Gung Fu. And then later on, he changed it to Jeet Kune Do, which is, I believe, the Cantonese version. My take on it is that Bruce Lee, first and foremost, was a revolutionary. He was genius beyond, he was a way ahead of his time. When I was talking about, I guess he started in probably around the 50s, but it really popped in the 70s.
Right. And let's put that to the side a minute here. Bruce Lee, if you don't know who that is, you shouldn't be listening to this podcast or be alive. Bruce Lee is a legendary film actor that took martial arts and put it in a it's very showy what he does. His martial arts and movies is very different than I see that maybe he likes to elongate a punch. He likes to throw one strike and hold it, like a good shot. It's very, very much very movies. Like none of that shit would actually work in a real fight, I think.
However, Bruce Lee knew that, though.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that he talks about it in his books, he talks about it in interviews, and his students also talk about it, that there is a difference. He knew that there was a difference between actual fighting and movie fighting. But
Right.
the guy it was his career. He was one of the first people that actually made a living being a martial artist,
Yeah.
because he trained in the martial arts, taught it, but he wasn't making the money he makes in Hollywood, obviously.
Right,
So
right.
because he was an actor and actually opened up a lot of doorways in the cinema industry. Not to mention, he was moving away from the classic stereotypes of Asian men,
Right.
AKA at the time called Oriental, which is now
Very racist.
or should we say politically incorrect?
Yeah. I think you can call like an artifact or something Oriental, like a carpet or a toothbrush, but not a person.
Not a person, not anymore.
Not anymore. But back in the day, we used to say it all the time.
And we all know he understood what it meant and what it was to be a minority.
Yeah.
That being said, he also believed completely, I believe, in the American ideal of the melting pot and all men are created equal. And plus, he was a Taoist as well, and he studied many religions and many philosophies, and he majored in philosophy.
He was a spiritual guy, man.
Yeah, very spiritual.
And every one of his interviews that you can probably watch on YouTube, you sit there and you're listening to him, and he's taking you in another direction. The guy, when he speaks, you listen.
And it's funny because he was definitely way ahead of his time.
Absolutely.
And being what I'm trying to not say this and be wrong. Being I'm not gonna say Oriental or Asian, but being a I guess I would say Caucasian
Right.
in America, even though his wife is white.
Yeah.
I think he understood probably firsthand. I mean, he was in China. He was bullied. As a lot by now, most people know. He came to the States. He loved the fact that there was so many different types of sports, so many different types of just cultural exchanges and knowledge and wisdom and different cultures, not just Asian.
Variety everywhere you go.
That's a perfect way to say it. Variety. I mean, I think that's what it was. I'm guessing because I don't know him, but my what I'm assuming and what I can see from my way of studying him, he's a big influence for me as well.
Yeah.
That he liked the idea that all men are created equal. He says it on the God. He says there is but one family on the God was one of his quotes. Yes. And I think he was one of the first people that kind of started. I call it cross training, teaching non-cultural people. I don't want to. I don't know. I'm keeping it fluff.
Right. Yeah, he would teach the round eye, if you will. Right. The gaijin, which was a no-no. It was a big no-no.
Yeah. So. And he did that. He learned. He loved boxing. A lot of people don't realize he loved Muhammad Ali. He loved Muhammad Ali. He loved fencing. A lot of boxing went into. He tried boxing. I don't know the full story. I've heard different versions of it. He tried it. Some say he got frustrated with it. Might have get beat up.
Right.
Others say that he did it and then went into like his Wing Chun at the time because he studied thoroughly. The one art that people don't understand that today. Here's a great opening for this topic. Today, people talk about mixed martial arts, and Bruce Lee is kind of like the forefather, at least one of the pioneers or forefathers of MMA.
Right.
But people, even today, the same topic is around today as it was back then, that you can't just mix all styles and be prolific. Even Bruce Lee started with Wing Chun. He had a mother-based system that he springboarded off and evolved. And I guess we can go into that as well. But Jeet Kune Do basically is ideally means the way of intercepting fists, but he later on regret using that limitation, and he preferred using intention to intercept someone's intention or attack, or anything along that kind of energy. He didn't like limitations. I use the word like John Negron, unlimited is my Gmail and a lot of things because I like that concept. He was one of the people that freed me mentally about 20 something years ago. I had a classical background, Japanese style. And even before that, I was free. Then I got classical because I wanted a foundation or something. I realized just in the 80s that I needed to ground myself in one style. And that's when I stayed with it. But then I realized that I needed to get away from the style. And we can get into a traditional, ancient, I can only use it the Japanese way, which is called shuhari. We're going to get into that, about how martial arts is experienced in every single martial artist's existence or training. And it's shuhari, which is 3 calligraphy characters. I don't know how to say it in Chinese, but I know it in Japanese. And it means basically the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And Bruce Lee mentions those phases.
Right.
Phase 1 is learning foundation, and protecting it, sticking to it, curriculums, until you earn proficiency in it. Usually that would be categorized like a black belt, 1, 2, or 3 level. And then later on you learn what's called the ha, which Japanese means to change, modify, or adapt. That's when you take the style and make it more natural to yourself, second nature, so to speak. And then the last part is ri, which is which means to forget, or it dissolves or disappears. It just becomes second nature, almost you don't think about it.
Muscle memory. You just do it. You just do it without thinking about it. And that's all training, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that's where he might be, my humble opinion, that might be one of the places where he evolves from, I believe. I'm sure that he learned Wing Chun to very advanced levels. I'm not certain what the history of that is. He seemed very proficient in it. At least he got the foundations and mastered the foundations. You can see, I saw with my own eyes in old footage. But then he wanted to do that. He wanted to change it, adapt it, and evolve. And he wanted to not just make it for that one style or that one range. We're going to talk about how he discovered with the 4 ranges of striking. And that actually mirrors into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, ironically, because they have the distances and closing the distances.
Right.
The Gracies say he who controls the distance controls the fight.
Right.
Bruce Lee was talking about the 4 ranges in the same way. The only thing is he called it kicking range, punching range, trapping range, and grappling range.
Right.
And I think that these things are still around, and the Gracies used it, and I still think it's still in existence with MMA, except it's not the same trapping, for example, as it was, because his key strong points were Wing Chun, which became Jeet Kune Do, intercepting fists. Later on, you start seeing how he evolved, and like today, clinching can be considered trapping,
Right.
or grappling. It's like that. There's even ranges between the ranges.
Yeah.
There's punching, intercept, and then there's a wrist trapping, which Japanese Toritech Kyongata, the basic trapping techniques. There's trapping Wing Chun Na in Chinese, and obviously Wing Chun. But there's that fine few inches of where it's trapping and boxing, and that can go on forever. And MMA, as you know, when you're clinching on the fence, they're striking even in
Right.
clinching range. So
Yeah.
it gets a little meshy. You know what I mean?
Okay, right. So, with all that in mind, now that you've explained to the people exactly what Jeet Kune Do basically is, let's put it in let's put one-on-one here. Not Bruce Lee, a high-level Jeet Kune Do guy, versus a high-level Jiu-Jitsu guy. Now you can't use Bruce Lee because when you think Bruce Lee, people go ahead and go immediately to the movies, right? They immediately go to the movies. For example, what's a good movie that Bruce, like the funny one with Chuck Norris? What was that one called?
Enter the Dragon or Game of Death. Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon. Now that is a great one. That is a good one. That is a good movie, right? Because Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris at that time, it was big news, right? But Chuck Norris was a big time kickboxing champion, black belt karate and all this other stuff. And Bruce Lee, if you look at that scene, like you can't put that into reality because it's so showy. It's so the whole time he's bouncing around and he's catching, like he punches one of Chuck Norris's punches, right?
Yes.
Which is it's kind of hard to do that in a realistic fight. Now we're doing it this way. We're doing a Jeet Kune Do guy versus Jiu-Jitsu guy, but we're putting it in let's do it on a mat or in a cage or something like that with some. Because if you put it in the street, you're gonna go to the garbage cans. You're gonna go to the bottles.
Which is also Jeet Kune Do, right?
No, exactly, right. But we want to keep it as simple as possible, right? Jiu-Jitsu guy in his gi, Jeet Kune Do guy doing his own thing.
All right. So here's the thing. Each side has different angles and levels and approaches. Let me use the word approach.
Right.
Because you can say grappling, you can say jiu-jitsu, you can say Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you can say Gracie jiu-jitsu. Let me just mention that what era. Now we're gonna have to start talking about what time period, just like history.
Exactly,
here.
right.
Because if we're gonna go into talking about Bruce Lee at the time he was alive, that style of Jeet Kune Do, he believed that his style was for the street. He believed that he didn't teach. He taught. I wouldn't even say if it's sport. In my experience from studying some of the books and footage, he did spar. He did a few sporty stuff here and there, but that was like maybe 10 to 5% of what I've ever seen him teaching and training and talking about, lecturing about. Right. To me, the gist of his style was more for the street. I'm talking about he did finger drives to the eyes, pinching. Right. He talks about groin kicks. And a lot of his later, his lineage later on, after Danny Inosanto and some of the later students, they start adding ear slaps and rape, ear ripping and pinching. So it depends. It depends on what we're talking about. Because going back to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu system, it's the same thing. Sport jiu-jitsu today versus Gracie jiu-jitsu.
Exactly, and that's a
difference.
huge thing, right? and the thing about this is. When I was learning my jiu-jitsu under Professor Leo, there was some self-defense things that he would teach me that are pretty much just like catch wrestling. They're just very nasty. Like there's a defense for when somebody's trying to take you down. You pretty much end up snapping their neck, right? So the martial art aspect of jiu-jitsu separate it from the sport, right? So let's change the scenario now. So let's put it in a street fight. Let's put the jiu-jitsu street style versus Jeet Kune Do street style. Okay, what's the outcome of that?
Are we talking Gracie, old school Valley 2? Let's call it Valley 2. When we're talking about Gracie street fighting, I just call that Valley 2.
Right.
Even though it's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, I'm going to say that.
Let's put it this way, right? Let's take a high-level black belt in a street fight that learn.
Or Valley 2 though?
Well, okay, no, yeah, because the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, they have striking. There's a lot of striking. There's striking that I learned from Leo. Showed me a lot of things. That, he came from the old school, right? Yeah. So he learned the old school Jiu-Jitsu stuff. So let's do it that way. Let's take the street style Vale Tudo versus Jeet Kune Do.
Now you know that the Vale Tudo early version.
Which, if you don't know, vale tudo means anything goes. It's
In
Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Yeah, it's Portuguese.
Yeah.
Anything goes. Vale todo, in Spanish. Vale tudo. Right.
Anything goes means, but even though
No
it
holds
still
barred.
there's a whole other area to that too, because there's rules in that too. But depends.
Right, there are rules.
So
Yeah.
conceptually,
That's it.
Vale Tudo, second phase, because first phase they didn't even believe in punching because they feel like it's gonna break your hands when you punch somebody in the head,
Right.
and it makes sense because the hand bones are smaller than the skull bones, and yes, ideally that if you don't catch the mandible bone, the chin bone, and knock somebody out,
Right.
then you got to develop with the padding that goes on with boxing gloves. You can hit to the head and jar the head, and what makes a knockout is the rotation of the brain spinning, in the skull, bouncing back and forth. That creates a knockout.
Right.
That's from pressure, blunt force to the skull. However, you can't. They don't believe that you can do that without gloves and have that much power without breaking your hand, or at least not without karate style conditioning of your knuckles.
Right.
That being said, so they went into slapping. They believe palm strikes, which are just as hard, but it might sting, but you probably won't break your hand because it's
You're using
soft tissue,
that's
padding,
the meaty part of your hand.
Yeah, and if you look at the early UFCs, UFC 1, 2, and 3, you'll see that Royce was doing a lot of palm striking.
A lot of palm striking.
He didn't do much punching. It's a heel kick into the kidney. And that goes to the old ancient Japanese styles that I can only talk about what I know. And I know that there's a old Kosutsu methods where they use bone against muscle and muscle against bone. We'll talk about that another time. But yeah, so long story short, yes. Now, we're talking about Jeet Kune Do, which they do finger drive, dirty tricks. They do pinching, old school JKD. I don't know. I think from my experience, I'm going to have to go with Jiu-Jitsu because the limited amount of ground fighting that I seen and learned in JKD. Because coming out of the 70s, coming out of the 60s and 70s, it was still the myth of that one punch knockout or the machismo. More than the myth, because Bruce Lee knew punches were realistic and not realistic. More than the myth, I think it was more about manly machismo that came out of the 70s. It was like stand up, toe
put
to
your
toe,
dukes up.
put your dukes up. John Wayne.
Yeah.
These are all these guys are coming out.
Robert Meacham, just those guys with with them just squaring off with the old timey fists.
Yeah, like, put them on.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
The fighting Irish.
Yeah.
So I think he didn't concentrate enough on the ground. It wasn't as well rounded. I do believe personally, if he was around today, he would have totally taken.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Chuck Norris, he also, there's a great picture of one of the Machados putting him to sleep, right, choking him with a gi.
Tongue all sticking out. He's going like, I love it. But I mean, no disrespect to the man.
No, that Chuck Norris is awesome.
But a lot of myths were. The thing I like about the Gracie family, the first generation, because we're already like third and fourth in, but the first generation of the Gracies, they have a history. We know about some of the background histories, and there's some dark areas, but there's a
lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, but there's a lot of they put their bodies, they put themselves in line. The world has to give them respect because they actually took a style, like we were talking about. You just can't be a mixed martial artist and say I want to do a little bit of everything and be proficient. You gotta have a base somewhere.
Yeah, you need some kind of
And they did it with jiu-jitsu. They represented jiu-jitsu and those principles, just like Bruce Lee did it with Wing Chun. And there's a lot of, like, judo, Gene LeBeau cannot be without mention. He did it with judo and Western boxing because that was what was hitting wrestling, catch wrestling.
He was a catch wrestler too,
So, these guys and Antonio Inoki, much respect and love to these people. And if I forget anybody, forgive me. I don't have any notes in front of me. But these are guys, these are our forefathers, the pioneers, and these guys put their bodies on the line where nobody else would. And now a lot of younger generations are willing to try and put their bodies on the line. Because the sport's already evolved. But trying it back on concrete and in mud and in gravel and sand and hot
Which is the reality, of a street fight. Yeah. That's the reality of a street fight. You train on mats and that's wonderful. You get, break a fall and all that stuff. But, there's variables out on the street that you cannot get ready for, right?
Yeah, and it's funny. I want to mention because even before Jiu-Jitsu, just a little before Jiu-Jitsu, I had, at least my awareness, it was already big in Brazil, but I had remembered learning about Sambo being like the only wrestling and catch wrestling I didn't even hear about yet, but I knew of Sambo leg locks and they did like judo and wrestling. They mixed it up. And I remember that I did remember catching leg locks way back before this. And that's the only memory I had of the type of grappling that's around today. I remember the Sambo leg locks. They were amazing. They would do throws and then do takedowns with leg locks. And I remember toes. That's where I learned it from.
Yeah.
And they probably learned it from catch wrestling, judo, mixing catch wrestling, judo, and jiu-jitsu. And they go back. And I remember reading a book way in the 80s, way before I learned of jiu-jitsu. There's a book called The Encyclopedia of Martial Arts way back then. And it talked about why Sambo didn't stay on the ground, and it's because the snow and the cold that's in
Russia.
In Russia. Yeah, I remember reading about that, why they don't stay on the ground. And a lot of people forget there's also topography has a huge influence on martial arts.
You know,
northern style mantis versus southern style praying mantis.
The environment very much is a huge factor in martial arts. I think it's safe to say a good striker versus a good grappler, that fight will probably end up on the ground.
Today, yeah.
Because,
we all know,
because but generally, a good striker, if he catches you, he catches you.
Well, that's the thing about, and I remember this even back, in the 70s. I don't want to get into my history too much because it's personal information, but I remember in the streets and fights, it was a big thing about strikers versus wrestlers. Not wrestlers, it was like a guy wrestling you. Not wrestling per se, like to wrestle you. Like
grabbing you and trying to put you on the floor.
Exactly, headlock. You know, it was basically,
headlock.
They grab you, headlock, punch you in the face.
Right.
That's old school courtyard, schoolyard.
That's instincts, man.
Mentality.
That's primal instinct. That's as a child, may not have known a damn thing, but you knew if you got a headlock on somebody, you were in a good. It felt good.
Yeah, and that's where I come from. When we're talking about street fighting back in the day, I don't
but we know about you, son. We know you. You got that thug life, brother.
You know me. I'll put you down.
We have a soundboard, people. This is gonna get annoying. No, but of course, yeah. So the Jeet Kune Do guy. Massively awesome striker, right? Because he's looking to get in. He's looking to throw a punch. He's looking to throw a kick. He's looking to stay as close enough to get the strikes in, but not too close. Yeah. Because once you get too close, that's when the jiu-jitsu guy.
Well, they have grappling. Let's not forget they do have wrestling. It was heavier. Remember Judo, Gene LeBell worked with Bruce Lee back in the day.
Right.
But he also has been known to say that he was a lot heavier. He would have just tossed him around with using judo and probably pinned him out with wrestling. But Bruce Lee was a little scrambler. You know what I mean? He wouldn't stop. It was like trying to put a cat in a bathtub. You know what I mean? And
that's a great visual, by the way. I think we have that.
Do we have a cat?
Goofy.
So that's basically like I think that's how that goes. He had mentioned that it would have been a different story had he would just really try to wrestle and pin him down, obviously. Right. And today, let's keep it real. I guess I would have to say if you let Bruce, if like this, even to this day, it hasn't changed. If you have a strength and you allow that person to stay in their strength, like if I'm gonna fight Mike Tyson, I box Mike Tyson, I'm gonna get my ass waxed. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That's just simple. And I think that's
even 50-year-old Mike Tyson. That dude is
still a beast. Would you let him punch you in the mouth?
Not at all.
He'd be like, so
over quick.
It'd be really quick, and that's what it boils down. Even today, styles make fights, and I think that's what they mean by you gotta, if you let Bruce Lee stay free movement,
right,
and let him transition in and out of those ranges. Right. He is to this day I still think would be the best in going from kicking to punching to trapping range to grappling and then transition back out.
Right.
No different than Brazilian Jiu Jitsu on the ground. They have the ranges. They got this. You got your gi no gi distances.
Right.
You have the distance from punching to not getting punched. The same thing, right. And I think that's what it boils down to. It's
space, no space. Pretty much exactly. That's how it goes.
And I believe both of them complement each other. Here it comes. Ready? This is the mind blower. Jiu-Jitsu comes from one side, Bruce Lee, and Jeet Kune Do comes from the other side. Striking versus grappling. Today, they can't be without each other. A full martial artist, like Bruce Lee said, is a bit of everything, if not everything. Yeah. Now, in Jiu-Jitsu and JKD both have come full circle. I believe they would have come full circle, where at the end of the day, it all is good. You have to, and it basically that's where we're at, 50-50. You got to be 50% on the ground, 50% standing. You got to have your ground and pound, your sprawl and brawl, your submission grappling, which is Jiu-Jitsu, and your free fighting JKD style. Stand up, you know what I mean? If it depends on the process and skill. Jiu-Jitsu will concentrate on skipping all ranges and going right from outside to inside. That's what they master.
Right.
However, reality, if you can find a way, if you find a way to utilize your weapons in each of those ranges. Let's say a jiu-jitsu guy wants to go from free fighting range through kicking range, through boxing range, through trapping range, into clinching, which is grappling range,
Right.
to take you down, to pass your guard, mount, and look for submissions. We expect you to that. If you, and only if, obviously, on either cause, if you can stop him in the way in, if you got good kicks to stop shooting, which is, it requires, it's immense skill.
Yeah.
If you got good punching to stop, which is not hard nowadays, punching to stop a guy from shooting in, we're talking about uppercuts, rabbit punches, shovel hooks, pushes, pinches, and traps. There's other stuff that you can do now, hip checks, elbow checks,
Right.
Obviously you're getting into sprawling brawl. If you're stopping them on the punching and trapping as far as the Wing Chun influence now, we're talking now. I'm not saying it's not good, because you cannot say that, because you can't. There's times when you need a little bit of everything. If you're sitting in a restaurant, you're in a booth,
Yeah.
you're in a kitchen cubby type of booth, or one of those booths,
Right.
which Jean-Claude Van Damme can vouch for when he got his butt kicked, because he was sitting in a booth. He couldn't use his legs.
Right.
The bouncer beat his butt.
Right.
So there are times when you're gonna need a different style. You're sitting in your car and a guy's coming through your car window. That'll be a good point to start using JKD.
Exactly.
This is why I allowed myself to learn trapping, because not always you're gonna be able to shoot in takedown.
Right.
If it's a fight where we're both standing in front of each other in leveled ground, and a city or a
Right.
beach, yeah, but again, topography changes the fights. Now we're getting into the ninja concept.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
the topography will change the fight, where if I'm sitting, again, we're in a restaurant. We have a
Exactly.
cubby. We're in a
Right.
cubby.
Yeah.
And a guy comes over to you. You ain't going to be able to move,
Yeah.
suddenly shoot in.
It's
And
very difficult to do anything if you're cornered.
exactly. So you're either going to cover up box, or you're going to have to trap,
Right.
and use either jiu-jitsu, Xing Na, Wing Chun, JKD style trapping, and some these kind of styles. This is the point. If you're going to be a fighter, you're thinking like a fighter, and you're thinking ring, you're thinking leveled ground, you're thinking arena, you're thinking dojo.
That's
then-
just one aspect.
Yeah, and this is why now I got to throw a curveball and say this is where my training is fundamental, but not limited to my foundations.
Right.
And that's where I'm talking about JKD in the beginning, where it has to evolve and be able to adapt to every situation. That's where JKD is brilliant. That's why I feel JKD's philosophy can really bring MMA to a whole new level, which is personally what I want to do in the future.
Right.
Find that the MMA is not limited to a sport in an octagon,
Right.
but conceptually, which is what Jeet Kune Do is, MMA, take it and say we can take from every style. Aikido is perfect for multiple opponents. The closest style you can get to actually applying fundamental, applicable, not constantly, but can be applied for multiple opponents. The Gracies are going to want to shoot me for this one, because they don't personally believe in multiple opponents. But I've seen it. You look at football players; they take on multiple guys trying to take them down all the time. You can't say that it's not possible. Yes, we're not talking about killing people, martial arts,
Right.
death touch, and roundhouse and kicks, but we are talking about situational
muck.
chaos. Yeah, we're not talking about taking a guy that's coming at you and killing him,
Yeah.
but we're all talking about surviving and escaping. And at the end of
Right.
the day, that's what we want. Even jiu-jitsu has top level jiu-jitsu guy talks about just get out of there.
Right.
Even the Gracies talk
Avoid.
about
If you can avoid a fight, do it.
yeah, and at the end of the day, it's not about winning. If you're on a fight, it's about surviving.
Yeah, you
the
gotta
fight.
get out of there, because you gotta wake up the next morning and live your life. You don't
Exactly.
want. I mean, nobody out there is gonna be unbeatable in a street fight.
No one,
but
no
you do want to be efficient enough that you can escape and be safe.
Now, you got to think that you might think you're the greatest fighter in the world, but if you're taken out of your strength, again, we're
Exactly.
talking about if I'm gonna fight somebody, what makes me, if you were to ask me what makes me confident that I would survive against any actual fighter in the world, I'm gonna say it's not that I can, that it would be my brain. It is my mind. What do you mean, John, by that? Well, if Mike Tyson comes to fight me, I'm going to take him out of his ring. I'm going to take him out of his strength. I'm not even box him on a slippery surface. I might, take his footing away, make him fall down. And then, I'm saying, who knows? Hit him with, I will use weapons. I will use cords, wires, and bottles. I mean, this
Everything
is
and
survival.
everything,
Yeah,
yeah.
the kitchen sink, a screwdriver, a cup,
Right.
a cable. You just name it, a chain link fence. I might make you fall into a spike.
Yeah.
I might make you, this is real combat. Now, we're not talking about dojo and this style versus that style only. We're talking about survival, and that's why I hope I didn't go off topic, but that's kind of where you got to think that if jiu-jitsu, which I practice and we love, Jiu-Jitsu keeps going in. Now, this is where Hickson's probably going to love me for saying this. If Jiu-Jitsu keeps going in just the sport aspect, and it's not Jiu-Jitsu, it's MMA and a lot of other martial arts too. If we keep it limited, and I'm not shooting it down because as on a business level, I get that there's certain things we have to package and sell a certain way because not everybody wants to be a killer. Not everybody wants to be, but some people just want to do it to get in shape. They want to build confidence, and these safe way to apply these techniques make it amazing, and that's why I love it. But on the same note, if we keep it only that way, where it's just about sport, touch and go, and going. Points. I think there are limitations.
With if you're always gonna be the referee, there's no referee out in the street. But like, to be honest, there's people that stop fights from happening, but you can't really go on that. If you put somebody in a chokehold on the street, my question to my students is, when they tap, do you let go? Of course not.
Well, it depends. You don't want to go to jail for
murder. No, yeah. But, again, it's the scenario. You have to think about what's happening in that moment. So it's safe to say that let's get back to what we were originally talking about here. The striker, Jeet Kune Do versus the grappler. It's already been answered kind of with UFC 1. Yep. UFC 1, right? The Jiu-Jitsu versus the world, and Jiu-Jitsu won that.
You want to know what blows my mind also about then? If you go back and watch UFC 1, 2, and actually Hoist wasn't in the third one, he was in the fourth one, right?
Right,
but 1, 2 to 4. If you watch all of them, it's amazing how even in the first UFC, they talk about Bruce Lee already.
Right.
And they even said, oh my God, he must be rolling in his grave. And finally all these martial artists come, you know what I mean? Style versus style, and who's going to be what. Maybe it was later on.
In the movie Enter the Dragon, the first couple scenes, he's wearing a little Speedo.
Valley too much shorts.
Right? And he's fighting Sammo Hung, who's a little chubby guy in there, right?
Except he wasn't hung. No.
Right? So, he kind of does.
Samuel Hung.
That opening scene where he's fighting, it's kind of like MMA right there, because they got the MMA style gloves.
And there was
they're not wearing gis. Yes. They're not wearing kung fu clothes.
Well, he wore it there, and then he took it off, just like they do today in Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
Like
they just went. It was very vale tudo, right? And he ends up finishing that fight with an armbar or a neck lock or a neck compression or something like that.
Crucifix.
Yeah, he had a crucifix
armbar.
Yeah, which is insane.
Crazy. Just sounds like acrobatic.
And we mentioned this in the first podcast, how you got the world's greatest striker, in movie world, doing a submission, right, to get a submission.
Exactly. It's a guy who is the one punch.
So I guess that answers the question: what would he be doing nowadays? He would be training.
For sure.
He would be training jiu-jitsu.
For sure. He would be. Actually, I think he would have been starting a religion.
Probably
some kind of philosophical, because he was just out.
He was a bit.
He would have established UFC a lot earlier. We would have probably had all these issues. Would have found a way. Probably made it big in some other state in America. Would have lost out. Probably went to China with it. Who knows? Or went some kind of historical. Probably would have went back to India and created some kind of lineage thing. Who knows? But I do believe that, and I've heard somebody say this. I'm only stealing and piggyback off of somebody, but I think he would have been, if he was around today. Maybe it was John Little that said it. One of the guys who writes books said that if Bruce Lee was around, he thinks he would have been starting some kind of new philosophical, spiritual sect of something, because his JKD was definitely on another level. Even in the way you think about, belief system.
Right.
The way he thought about even belief system was in mixed in that all rivers flow to one sea. There's only one, and he had that oneness thing. You know what I mean? And I think that's what they say. Very,
very centered man. Very much just on another level, philosophically, spiritually. The guy was just I think he grew up at the wrong time.
If I ever open up an MMA school, I'm gonna have a big ass picture of Bruce Lee. A few different founders, Bruce Lee. Who else? I'm thinking about not Chuck Norris, because he's part of it, but judo, Gene LaBelle. So who knows? I have Haley. Obviously, got to throw him up there. Jigo Kano, all of the guys. But we got to give our props to these four. And at the end of the beginning of this was basically which one would win. It's hard to say. I would gamble more statistically on the guy whose game plan is to take it to the ground,
right?
Because I guessing from looking at it, Bruce Lee wasn't really practicing sprawl and brawl. From looking at the writings and the teachings, I don't even see even now so much in JKD sprawling. I don't see even now. But that doesn't mean it's not there. I'm sure it is some schools, but it's not. I don't.
It's
see
not refined.
It's not refined.
If a good takedown happens, then maybe the fight's over.
Right, and because I don't see the defense against shots and takedowns, I honestly would have to say he would get taken down, and obviously we all know the history from there.
Yeah.
I would have to bet, if I had to bet,
Right.
against my gut, because I do believe in Bruce Lee's teaching.
Of course.
But I would have to bet that it would go to obviously the Gracie family, or who, depending who, if it's Hickson,
Right.
especially Hickson. You know what I mean? Like I can see where because he can take a shot.
Right,
He can,
exactly.
he's got the meatiness to take hits, punches here.
Yeah.
Not that the other ones don't. You know what I mean? But anything that we might not foresee, I think he might be able to handle it. And that's what I think, because I don't see it, only because I don't see it in the curriculum that I've talked with and seen. I'm talking about now. We're talking about Danny DeSanto generate. I don't see it. Doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
It's just that I don't see it.
Right.
It could be. I'm sure it is in some level, because they incorporate wrestling, but I just don't see it in seminars. I don't see it.
It's not going to be something that they're going to be able to defend 100% all the way.
Exactly.
Like a
And
jiu-jitsu
that's-
guy against another jiu-jitsu guy, you're going to be able to stop that takedown.
Well, because they train it all
Right,
day.
exactly, and that's the point. They train that specifically, right?
Right. And remember, their whole thing is closing those distances. JKD stays in those ranges
Right.
because that's their style, whereas Jiu-Jitsu transitions past those ranges. We're talking about kicking, boxing, striking, trapping, and grappling. They go right to the clinching range. You know what I mean? And if Bruce never gets his hit in, and he gets clinched, he's gonna and Gino Bell probably can vouch for the hill. He's gonna get thrown or taken down.
Right.
He might scramble a little bit, but he's gonna probably end up doing the same mistakes that everybody did in the early.
And then the Gracie challenges too. You can watch those on YouTube. There's a lot of karate guys and kung fu guys that fought the Gracies.
And there's Jason DeLuca, who did GKD.
Right.
He's actually fought twice, Hoist, and lost
Right.
by submission armbar. And I think in UFC, the early days, he got caught with a triangle. So he fought twice. One in the Gracie's in action, and he fought in the UFC.
Right.
So there's kind of like,
There's the answer.
yeah,
It's
there were
there.
people taking. There were JKD guys that did come to.
Yeah.
So
And here's a funny story, right? I had mentioned to you this a little while ago. There was a guy who stopped by the gym a couple months ago. He trained, I think, Hapkido. And he's a Taekwondo guy. And he wanted to take the class. It was on a Friday. So I did a little class, and he was so blown away by everything I had shown him. Just basic jiu-jitsu. I was showing him the most basic. It was two girls, it was him, it was two other guys, and it was a small class. And he wanted to see what a roll was, what we call sparring. So, I rolled with everybody, and then
he came in and he was like, maybe after all these years, he said, what rolling is?
Yeah, because he's sparring. I mean,
roll.
we call it rolling. They call it sparring. so he says, can I train? I said, yeah, absolutely. You can absolutely try it. He's generally your first class I don't let you roll because just for safety reasons. But since he's already trained martial arts since he was a kid, I'm sure he could. I wasn't gonna hurt him.
He'll be able to survive.
Yeah, I wasn't bullying him or anything. I just wanted him to feel the motions. So I'm doing basic stuff. Guard and putting him in my guard, and I sweep him, get to mount, and he's just trying everything in his physical power to get out from underneath. And I start noticing he starts to turn reddish. Like he's not angry, but he's becoming frustrated. He's getting frustrated at himself. Because he actually started to pinch me with his thumb and his
Pressure point deathlocks.
Yeah, like he was.
Muck.
This is the craziest thing, right? He actually took his finger and poked me in the throat, like right between the collarbones.
Oh my God! So all the times I've gotten that.
But like like a hook right down, like in
fish hook.
It's like but in
fish hook in the throat.
Right, yeah. So he does that to me, right? And I'm looking at him. I'm like, Is he really think this is gonna work? And I'm not putting him down, right? I'm gonna explain what I said to him afterwards. And he's trying all this stuff. He actually tried a wrist lock, which was cool, but he didn't really have it. He just kind of twisted my wrist up, very Hapkido style, right? And one of my students is a Hapkido black belt, Pablo. He's actually freaking awesome.
Pablo?
He's actually shown me some really cool stuff that I've incorporated into my self-defense course. But so after the 5-minute roll, he tried a bunch of just weird pinching. He grabbed my tricep and tried to pull on it. I don't even know how to explain that.
No way.
He he was literally trying to like pinch me to death, right? He was just trying to get some kind of just trying to get me off of him, pretty much, right? And I wasn't going hard. I was just going very slow. You know, he's pretty much a new guy. I don't roll hard with anybody, even the high level guys. But he was trying everything in his mind that he can think of. And after the roll, he's like, "Wow, that was insane." He had no idea what happened to him, right? I didn't submit him, right? I didn't submit him. I put him in a few close submissions. I had an armbar and I didn't finish it. I had a couple chokes. I didn't finish them.
That's what we're a lot alike in. We usually that's the gentle side of
it. And because the thing is, if I want him to come back, I want him to come back and train more, right? Because now here you got a Taekwondo black belt, Hapkido black belt, and now he can add to it, right? That's the thing I like about other martial artists trying jiu-jitsu is they can add to everything they already know. If you're good at one thing, try something new, right? That's kind of the thing. So afterwards, he's like, "Wow, I couldn't do anything. I didn't understand what was happening. You were on top. You had my arm a few times, and like he was kind of shaking his head, like I don't know what I could have done if this was like a real fight." I said, "Well, listen, you're pinching stuff, all right." And I explained to him with one of the students that was there. I said, "Come here for a minute, right?" So I did the throat thing where he put his finger right between the collarbones, and I did it to the other person, and they choked. They were like, "Ah!" And then they felt pain, right? And I says, the reason that wouldn't work on me is because I'm conditioned, right?
Not to mention the endorphins of the street fight.
Also, exactly, right? And this wasn't a street fight. It was on the mat, right? And this is the thing, right? I explained to him, I am conditioned, right? I have been, people have been trying to choke me out for 10 years, right? And I've been in some of the nastiest chokes. My neck's been twisted. I've had injuries. My body has been conditioned. So little things like that aren't going to work against a conditioned martial artist, right? And another thing I explained to him is, and I worked on him, right? Because like he's sitting there, he let me do it. He felt pain. It's not something he's used to, right? So he's not as conditioned as I am. And I explained to him, your martial art isn't wrong. It's just it wouldn't work against bells and whistles. It wouldn't work against a conditioned martial artist, right? Because already I've had people try to break my arms, break my legs, break my ankles, So I might have felt it, but not to the point where I'm gonna tap to it. A finger in the throat isn't gonna do it, not to me, right? And he was like, "Wow, that makes sense," and he's like, "Well, I felt completely helpless." And I said, "Well, again, your martial art isn't made for ground fighting, right? We started on the ground, right? If we would have done like a mixed martial art thing where you could have, hit me,
then again, his chances and percentages
it would have been a little better, right? He might have had a better outcome, a better fight, but we weren't doing that. We were doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu on the mats, right? And again, it's just like UFC 1. It's just like one martial art versus another martial art. You can't really put those two and then expect one to beat the other, because in the end, grappling, right? If you can close that range and not get struck by a striker, you can probably get the better of that striker. Not saying win, but you'll probably have an advantage. You're always going to have that little advantage if you get close enough to a striker. You could probably stop them if they don't know what's happening.
And if we're talking about the economy of movement, the economy of in the fight, and what I mean by the economy is, think about statistics. Okay, what chances are greater? And again, there's the maximum efficiency, minimum effort, where it's like, okay, so if I can get past you, your punches, your kicks, your pressure points, your trapping, intercepting, and we get to the clinching point.
Right.
Which are already easier to do than not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's as history has shown, and it hasn't even really changed much except for the great athletes that are performing. It's still hard to keep somebody from grabbing you. I mean, you cannot. Yeah. It's always been since, like we were talking about at the beginning, from the 70s to now. Yeah. To me, it hasn't changed. You cannot. You can do a lot of footwork. You can do float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Like it's all defensive. But even if it wasn't,
somebody's gonna clench. It's gonna
at the end of it, because even Muhammad Ali. Let's look at all his fights. As much as he moved around the ring, if you get cornered in a corner somewhere and the guy grabs you, the referee's got to come in and break you up. Which we already know that if the referee never goes in there, they're gonna end up falling down and wrestling.
Exactly.
And that's what jiu-jitsu and Vale Tudo was born off of. They capitalize on realism. They capitalize on the chaos. And the anarchy that is fighting.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And actual fight, a fight that happens at random with like no provocation.
Yeah, with endorphins and nervousness and,
Right.
and anger, emotion,
And
emotional
emotion.
content.
Exactly.
And we're talking now like what the Japanese call randori, which is in jiu-jitsu sparring, which
Right.
we call rolling, but originally in Japanese it's called randori, which
Right.
means free fighting, but it doesn't.
Right.
The kanji actually means to control chaos, to seize chaos, or
Right.
to control violence.
Right.
And that's at the end of the day what's happening here. They learn how to control that chaotic ranges, the chaotic fights that people floating around, throwing wild punches and grabbing,
Yeah.
and holding control. And even though the techniques are called controls to this day, the judo names, and that's basically what it boils down to. If I can stop you and control you, and just whoever at the end of the game, whoever controls the distance and controls the chaos, it controls the fight.
Right.
You know.
Okay, so I think we've covered that topic pretty well today. I feel like without disrespecting anyone, of course. That's important for us.
Because there is no such thing as the best style.
Yeah.
It's what best style works for the person, for
Exactly.
the individual.
You know,
what I
and
mean?
and we're martial artists here, guys. John's trained everything under the sun.
Well, I'm acquainted
Pretty
with
much,
everything. Yeah.
pretty much.
I love martial
Yeah,
arts.
he's a true mixed martial artist, and I mean you could see that from him explaining things. That's why I have him here, because the stuff I don't know, he for sure knows. That's a given.
I've been called by my friend Martin D'Arcy, Joe Dart's brother, the inventor of the Dutch choke. I was told that I'm a martial arts encyclopedia.
Yeah, and that's
Sort of.
very cool. That's very cool.
He used to call me, John, what is this? What is that? What was this? You know, I love all the arts. And again, I am in that concept, I'm a Jeet Kune Do conceptionist, which
Right.
means like I believe in that. All martial arts are beautiful and great, and they all have something to offer. Not everybody
Exactly.
wants to roll around the
Exactly.
floor.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to grapple. Not everybody wants to strike only. See,
Yeah.
it's everybody has a style, and there's many what's the word I'm looking for? Many ways and many approaches and many custom made styles that can fit the individual. And I just
Right.
believe that, like the American belief system, we should be able to incorporate from every culture and every style.
Yeah, absolutely. Never put down any martial art except for the ones with the no touch crap. That's bullshit, right?
It's good for those people.
Yeah, I mean-
I've even learned to appreciate that, because coming from my own hippie ninja style, that wasn't like that in the '80s, but then suddenly became very like that, pretty similar to it. I'm sorry to say that it is.
Yeah.
It's to each his own. Some people
Right.
feel safe in that fluff.
But that's an important word you just said there, safe, right?
I know,
Because
man.
believe it or not, right now there are some really bad. I stay watching YouTube, watching those really weird,
I noticed. Yeah,
no
he's
touch martial art. Okay,
No, that doesn't work. But,
okay.
but
Now the thing about that is now you're putting people's lives in danger, because if they believe that they can do that on a street with a man coming at you,
see, the thing about you and I, Eric, is that there's one word that separates us from a lot of other people. I mean, a lot of people are the same way. We're pragmatic.
Right.
And there's a difference. We have a pragmatic approach. I'm not afraid to say, okay, does this work? Can it work? And I mean, it all fits somewhere, right? But there is that limitation. There's an extremity.
yeah,
And I will have to stand for something on this one. I think we both stand on the same on principle on this one, and that's that because there's lives on the line, and then there's people, and that's what the Gracie challenge was about originally in the UFC.
Yeah.
That it was back then. It was about the punch, but now it's gotten to a point where these guys are doing like Jedi Force stuff and
there's
death touch from
these
30 feet
Systema
away.
guys that I seen. He's laying on his back and he's got this huge bell and he's just flopping around and people are bouncing off of him. That's also mass hysteria, because either he's told those guys to do that or they're believing the
It's
hype.
cultic.
It's
we
very,
had
very
that in
cultic.
ninjutsu in the '80s too.
It's
There were
crazy.
the cult guys that follow that are very, and they're still sad. People know they've been woken up already. They know the truth. It's just that some people here's what we learn in life. You're gonna have people that they're gonna wake up to the truth, but still prefer to be lied to. And they
That's
still prefer to live
100%
in
true.
fantasy.
Yeah, but
Unfortunately.
we as instructors, bro, we have this responsibility to make sure that our students actually know the truth, right? I teach things and I tell them every time I do any kind of self-defense class or seminar, I tell everyone this is practice. This is a scenario, right? There's no emotion. There's no variables that, there's no tree here. There's no dirt here. So it's very much that's something we have a responsibility to tell our students, even though we're teaching real stuff, we gotta let them know. Listen.
Now, the thing is that they're on the same topic. From my personal experience and my wake up calls in the 90s, the truth sometimes can be very hard to swallow, even when it's the truth, even when it's
Right.
in your face. And I mean, we see it with religion,
Right.
we see it with martial arts, we see it with politics, we see it with finances, we see it with everywhere.
Right.
You can bring a horse to water, but sometimes you just can't make them drink it.
Right.
And you can say, look, but this is the truth. This
Yeah.
is the truth, and this is the truth.
Yeah.
Because the truth is truth. It doesn't change for whatever situation.
Yeah.
But people don't like the hard, cold truth. Sometimes they want romance. Sometimes they want fantasy. Sometimes
And that's where these no-touch guys get their students from.
that's what I mean by comfort zone. And if they're comfortable, you know what I'm saying. And if people want to buy that, then this is America.
Right.
That's the beauty of America.
Yeah.
They're allowed to. They want to play video games and
Yeah.
if they want to smoke cigarettes, even though it's bad for them, they're gonna get cancer.
Yeah.
They do it. We allow people to.
People still do it.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's just a matter of character.
Right.
At the end of the day, is and like I said,
You know, I just hope none of these no-touch guys students actually get hurt trying that stuff.
sadly, people get hurt taking baths. So, I mean, you know, like I don't know, like it's true. I'm with you as martial arts. We feel like we want to preserve something in people, and we want to stand and up for something and have values in what we do. But you know, sometimes people just want to be, and there's different. I have an instructor that used to tell me that there's those people that are you're fighting, you're rough students,
Right.
and then there's people who pay the rent.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
exactly.
Like sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, and you know, there's no fight for the rich. They say there's a lot of different quotes I can go with, but
Right.
at the end of the day, I prefer to have that balance. I think that I'm old school. I'm like I come from that. The gentleman old way of thinking,
Right.
the manly arts. I'm old school still, even though I think that I should have been born in the 20s because I'm like a hat wearing man. You fight it out, you shake and then have a drink afterwards.
There you go.
You know, we don't look today.
Not
guys
not
don't even know if
another
they're men
thing.
or women.
Not
Now
a
it's
thing, not a thing, man.
We live in an era where
Yeah.
you heard my meme the other day. It's like a kid goes, like, "My generation is gonna start a revolution," and then I posted that your generation couldn't start a lawnmower. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
This is true. That's another topic we might have to cover one day. is
that would be a great topic
The
about
softness of
the pussification of America. Let's call it what it is. I'm sorry, but you know, and our kids, and I don't believe in wrapping our kids up in cotton swabs and sending them out. I think that, you know, think about our times. We went out, we played in the street, we got dirty.
well, toys when we were growing up were made out of steel.
The Tonka toy. I mean, the Tonka trucks. It was steel.
Steel and
You know,
plastic
you
and-
get hitting your shin. You're like, ah.
Yeah.
You know, I got scars just from playing with my toys. But you know,
I'm pretty sure I could have destroyed my eyes with every single toy I had.
Yes.
Because everything had points. Nothing was soft plastic or anything like that. But that's for another day, bro.
And these are learning. You run into a wall, you learn the hard way sometimes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you know, I think that there's nothing wrong with protecting our children. We're fathers.
Right.
Just want to put it out there that we're both fathers and we have daughters and we have families. And I'm not saying that we got to live in a Spartan type of society.
Yeah.
But I think that America is getting really soft, and that would be a great topic. And I'm not getting into politics, but I want to get into like, what the hell is going on?
I'll tell you what happened just to keep people on edge here, just to the next time we do this again. I think technology has kind of made things so easy for us that we don't need to be tough, right? There's a lot of things that people do. Everything's automated, right? Before, you actually had to go to the damn library, get a book, and write a report. Now, on your phone, you just Google a word, and boom, there's every information, everything you can think of is there.
It became the last 3 decades became about convenience.
Exactly.
And what happens with convenience is people get lazy. They don't.
And
They
that's
do
what
less
happened.
and
It's
less
maybe
and
it's
less
not
work.
maybe it's not so much the pacification of America. Just we all became lazy. Everybody.
People started suing in the
Every-
80s already. Are you kidding me? No, people were like, "Oh, I fell asleep. I'm going to sue this hardworking doctor," and then that's what happened. Then they had to charge you more. And,
Yeah.
insurance rates went up, and,
Yeah.
and then you got I hate to say, like my teacher had to soften the art and made it impussified it
Yeah.
also. I'm
That's-
sorry.
that
And
could
today
be
you got a
true.
bunch of, and I have to put it out there, but you got a bunch of pussies out there that think they know that they're grandmasters or masters or
Right.
15th degrees. Sorry guys, you know who you are. But I have to say it.
Uh-oh.
But it's because
Ninja community now starting to.
they're hating me right now, but they love me. They're those that love me know they hate me. But I'm speaking the truth. You know what I mean? And you know what else am I gonna say? They're good guys out there. Just that
Yeah.
there's also a lot of flakes.
And this is again to close out here, guys. We respect all martial arts.
Mostly.
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
not the pressure point.
Crazy,
Energy.
no touch. Yeah, that's a little far
kill you
fetched.
with your fart type
Yeah,
stuff.
I don't know. That's possible. But guys, I want to thank everybody, and we'll try to do another one because we missed one last week. So we'll try to get 2 out this week. If not, we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, guys, have a good one.
All right.
Till next time.
Later.